making your own game can be a lot like climbing a mountain. When you're standing down at the bottom and you look up, you often think to yourself, there's no way I'm gonna be able to climb this. Then once you start and you reach like halfway or whatever, you're starting to realize that you've made a very big mistake and doubt if you're even gonna make it to the top. And then lastly, you never even really know if you do reach the top, is the view going to be worth it? Now, with that said, I'm a game developer and today I'm gonna be climbing a mountain. So I figured I would bring you guys along with me, and I'm gonna be covering some extra skills that are not like technical related that I think you should improve upon if you wanna become a better game developer. So let's go. So I just left the city of Sango and had my first little climb. Current altitude is about 130 meters. I'm planning to go up to 430. I am very sweaty already. It's like, the sun isn't out luckily, but it's very humid. However, it's this very serene world right now. It's very lush and green. You hear the animals in the background. And it leads me to my first skill that I think you should master as a game designer or a game developer making indie games. And it is writing and also storytelling. So instead of just me being like, I'm in a forest, you can be like, I'm in this lush green environment. There are very dense trees everywhere. I can hear the sound of cicadas in the background or whatever. And it goes more than that. So with writing, I do mean story writing mostly. So if you're making a game, it usually has some kind of narrative. Maybe the narrative is very basic, but you should still always have one. And I think what can really break a game very quickly, even if you have really good mechanics, is if you have a story that truly is just horrible. So you can have a story that is very much sidelined. Usually you don't expect indie developers to have the best story if they have very good gameplay mechanics. But I think having something that has at least a little bit of polish does help a lot in really setting the atmosphere of your game and how the player feels about it. And I think writing allows you, by training your writing, to tell better stories, not just through text, but also through a visual medium like video games. Now, how do you improve your writing? Just by doing more of it. What I would suggest almost is to write side stories based upon your game. So for example, if you have a sci-fi shoot 'em up game or whatever, write stories, like little short stories. You don't have to publish them or anything. Just train yourself to write small stories about maybe your characters or whatever. Can also always be still very fun to add to the lore, if you have some like in-game lore, to have those things. And just by doing that as your almost leisure, you will improve your writing just by having practiced it more. And then one other way you can really improve your writing and storytelling, this one will require you to have friends though, is to do something like play a Dungeons and Dragons or another role-playing game, as that's a kind of game where really the storytelling elevates it. You can play Dungeons and Dragons purely as a numbers game, but then it's usually not as fun, or you can tell it as this immersive experience. And over time, I used to Dungeon Master games as well. You get better at really explaining environments, how you want to portray your vision of something to a player and things like that. So let's continue the climb. Hello, my students. Today I will be teaching you to levitate. Okay, not that, but I think what I do want to talk about is not learning how to levitate, but learning how to improve. So instead of learning a specific skill, I think you're much better off learning how to learn. So if you've been that person who's always been like bad at school because, oh, I don't know how to study or whatever, and it didn't interest me, you're doing game dev. It interests you, clearly, because you're not in here for the money. But don't you think that it would be very valuable if you actually manage to find a way to improve how you learn, so that no matter what topic it is, whether it's development, whether it's writing or it's art or anything, you can improve upon it, and you can improve upon it faster than your competition, faster than all the other indie developers. The good news is YouTube is filled with all these productivity videos going over different study methods, you know, the Pomodoro, but also some more advanced like Notion stuff and whatnot. And I think if you spend like a few hours trying out different ways to learn, you'll actually speed up and regain those 10 hours you spent very quickly. It has a very high return on investment. And what I also like to do, this goes pretty well for almost anything you want to learn, is you've probably played games because you're a game developer. See yourself as that RPG character. There's a ton of videos also on the you're an RPG character trope, but you're a game designer. If you make an RPG, you probably even have to write the actual code that does the leveling up of your character. So if you can write the code on how to level up for some random character in your game, why can't you do that for yourself and really find a way to track, am I improving my writing? Am I improving how I'm making these videos, for example? That's something that I do. You have, of course, the very obvious things like your subscriber count in my case, or how many art pieces you make, but also just the quality. These are a bit more subjective things, but I think that you especially would be able to figure out a good system to put a metric upon your current skill and that way improve how you're learning as well. There's a plane above. Oh, hi there. Hope I didn't keep you waiting too long. The next thing I think you and your game dev business needs to think more about is sales. And this is a very hated term. Hell, I quit my main job because it was getting too much of a sales job, so I understand your pain. But I think a lot of game developers have the problem that they don't think from sales from day one. They just think about, oh, I'm making a fun game and I'll learn something. And I think the reason a lot of game developers are broke is because they don't have this sales mindset from day one. They work on their technical skills, but they don't really work on the business. They're scared of the business almost. They just contact their accountant to do their taxes, and that's all the business really they want to deal with. But I think by having that business mindset, focusing on things like multiple streams of income for your company and your game dev business, and not just, oh, let's hope this game is successful and I can retire like the guys from Dwarf Fortress or Stardew Valley, that's not a good sales plan. And sales is a lot more than just going out to people and being like, hey, you want to buy my game? Or going to publishers and being like, hey, fund my game, whatever. Sales is also, as I said, thinking about what are multiple streams of income for my business, or tying back to the writing I said earlier, doing things like writing good copy. So copy is the text that you have on your Steam page, for example, making it dynamic, making advertisements is sale already. Although ideally, you don't really want to need to have advertisements, or in our case, this YouTube channel is also a sales idea. We haven't really had any income from it yet, but we have been growing, and this can become a source of income that, depending on how good or bad our release of our game Forge Industry is, which you can wishlist down below, this could become our biggest source of income. Even though our game fails, we may still have other ways of income. And these are things that you shouldn't be scared about. You should talk to other developers about money, about sales, and about how they're planning to fund their future, basically. Because if there's no money, then no matter how much you like being a game developer, there's gonna be a point where you're gonna have to get another job, for example, and suddenly you've gone 40 hours less a week that you can actually work on what you love, which is making games. I think I have climbed quite a lot already, so I'm gonna take a quick lunch break now, and then we'll continue climbing to the top. I don't know if it's noticeable on video, but this is a very steep climb. It goes very deep, and it's been like this for like the past 1 kilometer. So in this video, I do sound a bit out of breath, I feel. It has started to rain now, and that perfectly leads me into my next point that I think game developers really need to have, especially indie ones, and that is courage and resilience. As a game developer, you're going to be making a lot of bad calls, and it's also just you're jumping into the unknown basically, because you have no guarantee of your financial future really, and there is nothing really you can do about it except just accept it and find the courage within you to take that plunge, to make that call, to do that certain implementation of a mechanic that you have, or to scrap it all and start anew. And just like when climbing the mountain, when you hate your life already, it suddenly starts raining, and then you need to have the resilience to keep on going, to not just be like, okay, never mind, we're gonna stop here, I'm gonna head back to the warm shelter with good food. No, I'm gonna be heading up that mountain. I don't know what's gonna be ahead of me, but I have faith that if I put in everything that I have, I will make it a success. So that's my little motivational speech. I think if you're not a courageous person, game development is not for you. If you're not someone who can take that dive and no matter what's gonna come for them, have some resilience at least to not just leave and go back to what you know and what is comfortable. Game development is really hard mentally sometimes as well, and that's something that you need to be prepared for. Let's go before my camera gets too wet though. The weather has completely shifted now. It's a bit calmer now. I'm also underneath some trees. But the last point I want to talk to you guys about that you should really improve upon is being able to take inspired leisure. As a game developer, your life is going to be very busy, just even apart from like crunch and whatever. So it's really important that you do take some time to take breaks. But I think that you shouldn't just, as your break, go and mindlessly watch TikTok all the time. How shall we go? Whatever, I'll go here. It is very calm here. And that's exactly why I decided to bring you guys out to this spot as well. Because this is for me a form of leisure, inspired leisure. And what that means is I am taking a break from just being behind my computer all the time. But at the same time, I'm still priming myself to work for game dev. So for me, this is a point where I can really clear my brain, clear my mind, because there is nobody here. I saw nobody in the past 2 hours when climbing that mountain on my own. And I also really like the environment. It really makes me think about upcoming concepts, about how I want my world to be, for example. And you probably have a bunch of inspired leisure activities as well. Something else, maybe something like reading. Do you have a fantasy game? Way to get some inspired leisure is by just reading a lot of fantasy books. It's one, it should be entertaining, but maybe you'll pick up a few new things as well that you hadn't thought about before yet. Maybe some way to portray an evil villain or whatever. I'm not saying you should steal, but I think that you can learn a lot from reading what other people in the similar industry have done. I need to cross, I think. Let me quickly check my map. Okay, I am on the right path. So I think that what you should do is sit down, think about the ways that you relax, and maybe see if you can shift them a little bit to make them a bit more tied in with your game. Now, it's very important that you don't completely get rid of anything that's just mindless. Some other examples could be watching movies, like the very pretty movies, like the Christopher Nolans and whatever. I really got inspired from Avatar 2, for example, because the world was just so beautiful. The world basically shaped how I almost had an idea for a different game. And watching that movie really made it click of, wow, this is the kind of concepts, this is the kind of art that I would want. So by finding these ways of inspired leisure, you can actually get more work done without it basically draining your energy meter, because you only have so much energy to work in a day. But something like inspired leisure allows you to maybe even get more energy again and learn something new in the process. This video is probably a bit shorter than I had initially planned because of the rain, and there's no view anymore. I went to a place, but it was pretty boring. So I'm just heading back now. But I hope that I still maybe shared something new with you guys. You thought about something in a new way. I would love if you guys could also share something that you think maybe a developer that is just beginning hasn't really thought about and that they should do to really improve it. Leave that in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you guys as well. And apart from that, if you're new here, we make game developer related content, such as this video, a bunch of other stuff as well. So if you're a beginning game developer and you're interested in 2 pieces of quality content every week, be sure to go ahead and subscribe down below, as it really helps us out and you get this cool content. So it's a win-win for both of us. And that's pretty much all I have to say for this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Now I've shared with you 5 skills that I think can be really game changers, pun intended, because you're making games. Okay, whatever. I'll cut this out or something.